I don't understand how the labor and environmental provisions of the NAFTA can be characterized as loopholes. Question one. Question two, how would you change them? How would you change the regulatory obligations of the government of Mexico, for example, on labor and environment, without creating the opportunity for domestic pressures to increase U.S. tariffs on imports from Mexico, which is what you said.
Great question.
I don't understand that. I didn't understand what the tariffs part is.
When you reopen all the provisions part of NAFTA, don't you open up
right
a
now?
hornet's nest?
Okay, there's
if I can use
there
a cliche.
Are two flaws. Look, I go back. There's nobody who's more pro-trade than me. Not even Congressman Kemp, not anyone. You're not going to find anyone in this room more than me and the guys I work with. Now, number one, we currently, when we sign trade agreements, put the basic labor and environmental standards into the core of the agreement in a way that is enforceable. When we signed, NAFTA was first negotiated, recall, by the first Bush. Bill Clinton adds some amendments that are not in the core of the agreement. We now have developed what is the standard trade agreement, and NAFTA is not it. So there are labor and environmental standards that are side attachments that don't have the ability to be enforced in the same way they would if they were in the core of the agreement. And that is what the position that Obama has taken for all the years I've known him on NAFTA is that we should put those labor and environmental standards in the core of the agreement the way we do in agreements now. Second, on loopholes with NAFTA, there are loopholes in NAFTA, to be clear. There are these Chapter 11 investor protections, which were designed to prevent sub-national governments from doing things that would essentially undo what you were promised in the agreement. So if you feel that a sub-national government has unfairly taken your profits, you're allowed to sue in a tribunal to get the government to make a payment to you. Now, it was a fine idea, let's suppose. It immediately explodes into something it was never intended to be, whereby UPS sues the Canadian government for operating a postal service because they say that interferes with the profits they could have made on package delivery if Canada didn't have a post office. So they demand a payment from the Canadian government. A Canadian company sues it's either Mississippi or Alabama. They have a consumer fraud statute. They commit consumer fraud. They're found guilty and they have to make a payment and they sue and they say, yeah, we committed consumer fraud, but making us pay penalties, that's an unfair profit takings, and they demand payment from the U.S. government. Okay, that's the kind of thing that it undermines our ability to say the reason we're doing NAFTA is because we want to promote trade.
Look at
real quick, Jack, because I do want to get
every trade agreement in the history of the world has had loopholes. Every one. And the WTO, the World Trade Organization, every day of the week is fighting this fight between China and the U.S., between Japan and China, blah, 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 ad nauseum. Having said that, there is no excuse, in my opinion, for turning down the Colombia Free Trade Agreement. Colombia ships everything into the United States duty and tariff free. When Caterpillar tries to send equipment to Colombia, there's a 26% tariff on it. We are uncompetitive with Colombia because we are imposing upon U.S. manufacturers a high tariff. It is dumb. So the trade agreement would lower the trade barriers against U.S. manufacturers exporting to Colombia, and it is now off the table for the Democratic Congress. Bless their hearts. They don't want to increase trade with Colombia.
Let us not
that's a big mistake.
Let us not forget
What?
The basic premise of the economist's case for free trade. And it is not the trade diversion. There's no automatic presumption that a bilateral free trade agreement with a very, very small economy is great for the benefits of free trade, because much of the trade is simply trade diversion. That if you sign a free trade agreement with a very small nation like Panama, that most of the trade is not new trade, it's trade that's diverted out of Honduras or coming from Colombia instead of Peru or what have you. So be a little careful by just saying, hey, one country, we ought to just keep signing bilateral agreements over and over. And
What
the
would you
second
do about
is,
Colombia?
well, the issues in Colombia as I understand, I mean, I'm not a foreign policy expert, but the issues that people object to in the Colombia Agreement have to do with foreign policy considerations like violence against labor leaders and things of that nature.